top 5 tips to improve customer engagement on social media. Businesses that shun social media are missing a big opportunity, and with it, important custom. Store owners have to connect with their customers. I think this was very much demonstrated by our Christmas evening. So I'm now going to introduce Peter Doyle, who is the founder and CEO of Social Retail Group. Peter does know the industry a little. He has done some work with Hilliers, and he has visited Chelsea on the last five years. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks very much. Feel free to ask questions. I want to make it quite interactive, and also I'm the only thing standing between you and another cup of coffee, so I'll try and make it as concise as possible. A little bit about my background, just to put some context. 1986, started at Waitrose on the shop floor as a 16-year-old. Didn't really see retail as a career. It was really a means to an end. In my case, it was to buy a guitar, because I was really keen on being a rock star. Failed on that one. But Waitrose were really good to me. And what I learned then as a 16-year-old is, as Nigel was saying before, when a customer asks you, where is the bread or something like that, we were told, even though I was on fruit and veg, take the customer to the product. So that was embedded in me. This was just a weekend job. And that customer service ethic is something I found throughout my career in Waitrose. I ended up doing almost 15 years at Waitrose, up to head office, and then I did all the local marketing for all the branches. So we were buying local radio, local press, wraparounds, launching new stores. And then in 99, the marketing director, the first marketing director, a guy called Mark Price, who later became the MD, said, we're going to launch a website for Waitrose called waitrose.com. So that was my little project. I think it now employs about 250 people within waitrose.com. And it's obviously home delivery as well. At the time, we thought it was going to be just a food lover's portal. I haven't heard that expression for a long time, a portal. So it was about getting content together. And then I took a step over I left the partnership, went to work for Toys R Us around the end of the 90s, and ran their online business in the UK. Took that up to 5 million turnover. So I was quite lucky to do e-commerce actually 17 years ago, so I feel like a bit of an old hand at this, which would explain the grey hair and my sunroof on my head at the moment. And then I went to Hamleys, and I met a really nice guy called Simon Burke, who's currently chair of Blue Diamond Group. And he sort of coached me a little bit to what it was like to be a company director, and I got a taste for that sort of director level. So I thought in 2003, I'll leave this corporate life and set up my own business. So I raised some money, but it wasn't my business, it was my old school. So I really got into the heart of the local community, into my old secondary school. It was a normal school. But I understood social enterprise, so there I was, a sort of a corporate person, corporate dropout effectively. But I was doing business locally. And for the first time I started talking to my neighbours and started to be more local. That was about 13 years ago. So I did that for a couple of years and set up Social Retail on the 4th of July 2008. That date was very specific because I wanted to come out and be independent, come out of a venture capital backed company. And I started tweeting locally. So I thought I was late into Twitter. I started tweeting around 2008 when Twitter was about 2 years old. And I thought I'd probably missed the boat to become a social media consultant or trainer. Didn't really know what the business would do. I just thought I'll call it Social Retail because it sounds cool. And I set up a charity. I set up a music charity because the music theme carried on. And I didn't know what it would do, what it would be called, but I thought it would be great to sort of help young people because at the time my kids were quite young. So I started tweeting from a Twitter handle, the Rock Academy. I called it Reading Rock Academy because I'm based in Reading. I'll come back to a couple of slides on that in a moment. And I started using my marketing skills to tweet. We had Reading, is anyone from Reading? We've got a couple of, yeah. So Reading doesn't work as a hashtag because it's reading, so it's ambiguous. So we had RDG, and eventually it became RDG UK. So I learned that there were some people locally using this RDG hashtag, and I'd tweet them. It was all geeky people like me. antisocial. We would just talk on Twitter. We wouldn't have the confidence to meet up or even have eye contact. So we just learned how to communicate, how to talk. I started selling guitar lessons. I started doing 2 for 1 on guitar lessons and drum lessons. And people said, get off Twitter, stop selling. I suddenly realised I could destroy a brand here before I've even created one, because I was trying to sell. And then I suddenly realised, actually, these big companies that I'd just come a part of didn't know how to use social media. It was all broadcasting, it was all content driven. So I'll share some tips with you that I learnt over the last 8 years, tweeting mainly on a Friday, locally in Reading. To start with, it was just on a Friday, and I'd be tweeting, I'd go to gigs and I'd tweet live commentary. But I would go to gigs to promote and raise awareness for my local charity, my music charity, but I'd go to gigs that was original music. So I would do the homework and then give commentary. And sometimes it was me and a couple of people watching this band perform. And they couldn't understand why I was being so rude. Actually, they'd put their heart into their song. And there's me sat at the back of the pub looking at my phone. But I was actually giving live commentary to someone in California, someone in New York City, someone called Dave the Rave 1947 in Paris, who then became an avid follower. So I'm going to share some tips with you. Take them away. This is a whole new slide that I've got, thanks to Carol. So thank you for inviting me. 4 years ago, I did a talk at HTA. There was a guy in the audience called Andy McIndoe. Does anyone know Andy? Great man. He became my coach because I ended up doing some work with Hillier back in 2012, and then Garden Leisure Group as well before they were acquired. I'm currently working with another garden retailer I can't talk about at the moment, but I'm sure that will come out next year. So, 5 tips. You can have a copy of these slides, so you don't need to write them down. First of all, as humans, we are leaving footprints in the snow. It's quite a seasonal one because it was quite icy this morning. It's there. The data's there for you to grab. It's free. You don't have to buy it. If you know how to do a look on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat, just show of hands. Anyone on Snapchat? Ah, good. I definitely recommend Snapchat. My daughter is training me on Snapchat. She's done over 500,000 Snapchats now. But there's something as retailers that I find quite exciting about Snapchat, and that is the time sensitivity of the conversation. You know, she can do something that disappears, and it used to be disappears in a few seconds, but now you can make that Snapchat last a bit longer. And that's the bit that Instagram have actually now put in into their social network. So there's something around that sort of 10-second offer or 10-second deal that I think will be relevant in 3 or 4 years for us as retailers. So tip 1, listen. You can listen at brand level. You could listen at location level. I'm a particular specialist on geographical locations, so I sort of go down to hamlet, village, town level. That sort of, my specialist is in geographical hashtags. But most importantly, you can listen to your competitors, customers as well. Not just the competitor and what they're tweeting. You can actually listen to their competitors. What I like about Twitter is it's quite brief. You can connect with people you don't know quite quickly, normally around a single event. Sometimes when you're watching the TV, you can connect with people as well. And Twitter know this as well, and they're developing their platform for the first quarter. Just last week, they've announced a growth in Twitter numbers. So it's not a failing social network anymore. It's actually growing. And video, 5-second, 10-second video is really important. They will accelerate content on Twitter now with a new algorithm they've just put on Twitter. It used to be chronological order, so you'd see the last tweet first. But now they're learning from Facebook about accelerating content. So if, for example, you wanted to listen locally, this is a slide I share with a few people. You can start to see what are people talking about, who's influential locally. Sometimes these people are more influential than the local newspaper or the local radio station. You may have an individual with a couple of thousand followers. If they're following your garden centre, it's an opportunity to reach out and get some awesome market research from them. And it's there. You can see what devices they're using as well. But most importantly, it's listening to customers when they at you in a tweet. So this is a bit Twitter-centric, so forgive me. But this is Gemma, thanks, at Specsavers Loughborough. She doesn't know that Specsavers Loughborough is actually on Twitter. They're one of my clients, Specsavers. So she guessed, she just put Loughborough and the Specsavers in there. For my new glasses, ordered, made and collected within an hour, great service. You know, customers are using these emojis now as well, really important. So we've got to work out how we're going to talk to them. Do we talk to them in their language? Do we talk to them in our language? But we've got to listen first. And then I think the next tip is really about replying intelligently. And I'll put the word intelligently because I believe there's no excuses now for not doing what I'm just about to show you. If someone has mentioned your garden centre or your nursery in a tweet, in a positive way, that was a positive tweet, the instinct is to like it or retweet it, and that's where most people stop. But actually, if you go one step further and start to look at the profile, they're leaving these lovely breadcrumbs of information. I think Nigel had a killer breadcrumb for us all this morning about people moving away from promotion and empowering people, and that's something I very much believe in. So if you just spend a few seconds, if your guys on the shop floor are tweeting, which is where I spend most of my time, you can look at a profile and you can see what sort of person they are. Are they a prolific complainer? Are they a prolific ambassador? Are they a robot? Are they human? How often do they tweet? You know, this person did that tweet on November the 3rd, but hadn't tweeted prior to that until October the 25th. So that's not someone who's doing 6 or 7 tweets a day. That's someone who tweets frequently, but not high frequently. So that's quite an important moment for them. So that's a good opportunity to get a bit more information about them. And then reply. And in fact, Loughborough, the Specsavers Loughborough, did actually reply, which was great. So if you start to localise, if you have more than one garden centre, for example, you can start to localise this stuff rather than have it at brand level. And the person responded to that, thanks for the fabulous feedback, and then asked a follow-up question. And that's the skill of using Twitter as a conversation tool on the shop floor, real time. They could have just said thank you for the fabulous feedback, but luckily they listened when I did my training with them. And they want more information. What frames did you pick? And then you can start to build a conversation. The conversation can build up. Gemma replied, a pair of Karen Millen, turquoise frame ones, love them. There's a bit of a picture missing there. So, great choice, we hope to see a selfie. Now, Specsavers is all about selfies. That's how they promote themselves. So this is a great opportunity, a new opportunity, which is not a media spend, it's not a content generating exercise, but it is an empowering exercise for your teams to reach out and talk to people, especially about plants, as Nigel was saying as well. Third tip is humility. I think it's a good skill. What I learned 8 years ago was I had to relearn marketing effectively. I thought marketing was about a budget and putting that budget on the radio or press or TV. But actually, going right back to when I studied business studies, the definition I was told then was understanding the need and satisfying the need of customers. So if we can do that with a humble voice, I think people connect with that. And it's when I've trained over 3,000 people now on shop floors in Maplin and Hobbycraft and a few garden centres. And when someone says that first top tweet, Happy Bunny at Hobbycraft Reading now on Twitter, just spent 2 hours in my favourite place getting bits from my wedding, hashtag Neil Helly Wedding. When someone tweets that to the Hobbycraft in Reading, for Rona, who did this reply to say, thanks for your tweet, is there anything else we can help? She wasn't doing it because she wanted to sell something. She cared about this person's wedding and she didn't want the day to go with something missing. And what happened because of that, I think, humility, and she's a humble person in real life, Rona, a whole conversation flowed. I don't expect you to read that at the back. But there's a whole conversation. This was 3 days after we put Hobbycraft on Twitter in Reading. And this was a pilot we did last year, which resulted around 5 to 7% increase in sales. Over 9 90 days. It takes about 3 months to do that to get that change. But we're seeing picture exchanges between someone on the shop floor who knows about stuff, who can see availability, and someone who can't get to the store at that particular moment. They could be on a bus, they could be commuting to work, they could be in their lunch hour, but they're talking to an expert on the shop floor. The shortest distance, Twitter described them as the shortest distance between you and an expert, which is an amazing platform. It's not as easy to do that on Instagram. You can do it to some extent on Facebook. Fourth one, check your hashtags. We all use hashtags. If you don't use hashtags, it's perfect for geographical. I tend to focus on geographical hashtags. If you're in Aberdeen and you're an artist, Seen in the Dean is a really good hashtag for people to talk about their art. They share artwork with each other. And I only know that because Lee Dixon, who works in the Hobbycraft in Aberdeen, told me that. I would have just done hashtag Aberdeen, but he knows the local people. So if you get a moment, someone in your team or someone on the shop floor, ask them. I think they probably know what local hashtags to use. A couple of examples, you could do hashtag fail on Google and you'll see loads of examples. I thought I'd share a couple with you. This one was a UK fashion company that said, Aurora is trending, clearly about our new Kim K inspired Aurora dress. Winky face, not even a smiley face, a little winky face. Shop. And then they've put a link back to their website. So they're looking at this and think, oh, this is great. Our new range is trending. But I don't know if you know this. Does anyone know what was happening at the time? There was a massacre happening in Russia, in Aurora. So they had to then put out an apology. I've got this expression that says think twice, tweet once, which is just an expression I nicked from my dad, who was a carpenter. Measure twice, cut once. So if you're using a hashtag on your tweets, just take a moment to have a little look and who else is using that hashtag. Especially acronyms. I think they're the ones where people get unstuck. The other one was Susan Boyle. Has anyone seen this one? Apologise for this, but it was the right hashtag, but just the capital letters. Sorry, okay. The capital letters make a big difference. So you have to look at, you think, oh yeah, someone wrote that hashtag, great. But they've just got to make sure they get the letters in the capital letters. And the last tip, before I leave you to have a coffee or tea, is the one I most passionately believe in now, mainly because I'm getting close to 50. It's all about people, in my mind. People are our biggest asset, our biggest opportunity, our biggest competitive advantage I think we have in any business, but specifically where you have plant area managers who really know their stuff, who are passionate. And I learnt this from Andy McIndoe in 2012 when we went to Bath, Hillier Bath, and I met Julie Stenning for the first time. And she wasn't very, like me, she was very nervous about talking, but she wasn't very good at face-to-face, but she knew her plants, and she knew her job really well. And she was quite introvert. We put her onto Twitter. I coached her and said, that's an awesome tweet, don't forget the local hashtag. Follow We Love Bath, because they're pretty active, they had 3,000 followers. And she grew in confidence, and later on Andy saw this change in her, and he put her in charge of all the rollout of Twitter for the other Hillier garden centres, which was awesome. She's now left and she's doing other stuff, but that's because Hillier's got to change of direction at the moment. But I would always say the secret of this stuff is probably within your business. It's not a spend issue, it's a people issue. How can we, as Nigel said, there are moments in the day, there are moments in the week where you can improve productivity of your staff. You can empower people. And they can do a quick tweet or reach out and thank a new follower, respond to a mention, or do a live Periscope broadcast if you really want to invest some time. And you'll see some awesome stuff that just can't be contrived. So when Dawn in Hobbycraft, Carlisle, she's the store manager, when the floods were going on in Carlisle this time last year, national news, Sky TV, you know, a PR person would take a photo and say, local paper, Hobbycraft doing their bit. But this felt a bit more natural, a bit more humble, where they just took a picture, not particularly good quality picture, but an honest picture saying we're doing our bit, we're getting things ready for the rescue centres. And in my world of local Twitter, getting double-digit retweets is a pretty important event, actually. And that really said that Hobbycraft, although it's a big company with 87 stores, turnover approaching 200 million, it can actually be very local and part of the community. Because the people who work in that store are part of the local community. And all we're doing is connecting them to the local people. And then I'll leave you with this tweet, because I still use it 4 years on. This was from Garden Leisure Group before they were acquired by Wyvale. What inspired me about this was this particular person bought the plant, took it home, took a picture of it in situ, mentioned the store. This was Ensley Garden Leisure. Hashtag well happy. And because they'd got such a confident feeling that if they did that, the store would respond. And then whoever responded here said, that looks amazing. Thanks very much for sharing, good choice. And you can develop the conversation. So this isn't necessarily about acquiring new customers. It could be about after sales as well. But most importantly, it's about building a long-term relationship with your customers. And you can measure everything. Put your people in front of your customers and everything's measurable. This is Twitter impressions. And I'll stop there because I've overrun. But thank you very much. You might win an award as well if you do this stuff. Thank you.